Hi guys, welcome back to the ALSA podcast. My name is Sarah. Today we have JJ, Helen here today. But before we get started, I would just like to say a big shout out to the College of Law for sponsoring this episode. How have you been?
I've been good. I mean, we're filming on the last day of the first week back.
Yeah.
So it's been pretty good, very chill. A lot of just like welcome back events, easing back into classes. But I know starting from next week, things are going to pick up very, very fast.
Yeah.
So I'm not looking forward to that, but it's been a good week so far. How's your week been?
It's been kind of crazy. I didn't expect it to be like this, to be honest. I think it was just because of clubs and like the first week we had like the expos and then we had to go up and we were there for quite a few days, and then my Monday's kind of really annoying, so I have class from 8:30 to 9:50 and then a gap and then class at 12:20 to 1:30, 12:40 to 1:30 and then a gap and then from 1:40 to 4 and so like it's just I can't go anywhere. I have to stay here, but then also it's not enough time to like get a proper study in or anything. I'm just like, what do I do with my life?
And because you've started your 300 levels now as well, which I think is something you weren't expecting at the end of last year.
Yeah, definitely not. And property and equity are really difficult. I'm getting them really confused.
That's
already
very fair.
So.
That's very fair. I mean, they are the first 300 levels, but I think property will start to settle a bit more once you get into the topics and everything. Equity, I wish I could say the same. But it'll just depend on how they choose to teach it this year, going off last year's feedback.
Alright, so tell us a bit about yourself, just in general, like, are you from here? Like, where do you Kaupapa from?
So I was born in New Zealand, but both my parents are from China. I grew up in down south Dunedin before moving up here for uni. I'm a 5th year now. I studied a double degree in the arts with a double major in media studies and art history.
Yep.
I don't know what else you want me to say about myself.
What was it like growing up in Dunedin and having, do your parents speak fluent English?
No, so neither of my parents spoke fluent English coming out of China. I think they both went into like language schools once they came out, but no. So my parents have like an understanding of English. They can like do sentences, but obviously they're most comfortable in Mandarin and Chinese. So that's what we spoke at home growing up.
Yeah.
So
when you were going to high school and stuff, but in primary, did you get taught English first? Is it your first language or?
I think like the concept of first language is like kind of hard.
Yeah, it is a bit tricky.
Because what I've been told by my parents is that I learned Mandarin first growing up, and I didn't start learning English until I got shoved into kindergarten.
Yeah.
So I guess technically Mandarin would be my first language.
Yeah.
English would be my second language.
Yeah.
But like at the moment, obviously my English is a lot better than my Mandarin.
Yeah.
So
it's
a weird little.
I think that's what tends to happen. I've heard it from quite a few people now that they've like grown up here.
Yeah.
If their parents speak their like mother tongue, then they grow up speaking that until they get into kindergarten, and then they don't know any English, and they get shoved into kindergarten with this like brand new world. But then also like these little kids also don't know how to speak English very well.
That's true. So it's like everyone's kind of in the same boat.
Yeah.
And I think I was quite fortunate that growing up we were lived quite close to other Chinese families as well who went to the same kindy as me. Yeah. So I imagine, not that I can remember, but I'm sure if I was in kindergarten and 3-year-old Helen couldn't speak English to someone, she'd run off to like one of the Chinese people and be like, or something like that.
Right.
But, what about you? Did you grow up in New Zealand?
No, so I grew up in Korea. I was in Korea until I was pretty much 12 years old. Yeah. And then I came to New Zealand in year 7 here, so I was speaking a little bit of English in year 7 just because when I was younger in year 2 and 3 I was up in Auckland for just like a little bit of time. So that's when I first spoke English. I didn't know English when I first came to New Zealand then. So I remember in year 2, because I didn't speak any English, I didn't have any friends. But then when I was in year 3, because I was so little, that English got picked up really quickly, and then I very quickly became fluent. And so I did make a bunch of friends then, but then I had to go back to Korea because at that time when I picked up English so fast, I was picking it up so fast that my Korean was like kind of going bad. So we went back to Korea and then we came back when I was in year 7. So I had a little bit of English, but it wasn't to the point of where I'm speaking it now. Yeah. So that brings us to our today's topic, which is about the significance of speaking in our mother tongues. So we're going to be discussing the benefits, the cultural connections, but also the challenges that come with it. So let's get into it. What's it like to speak your mother tongue, and how do you think it contributes to your sense of cultural identity?
I think for me it's something I'm quite proud of, being able to speak Mandarin, because I know for a lot of other New Zealand born Chinese kids it's just not something that they're comfortable with speaking. Like, I think you'll find a lot of people will be like, they can understand it but they can't speak it, which I think would be so frustrating. But it's something I am very proud of. I've kind of put in the effort into it, I guess. But I guess at home in Dunedin, I had more of a Chinese community, more people to speak Mandarin to. But coming up to Wellington, I didn't have that. And so it meant like putting more effort into being surrounded by Mandarin and stuff like that. And like calling my mum more often so I'm actually practicing it. But yeah, I think it's something that's definitely kept me very in touch with my Chinese heritage and something I really value.
So do you think there's like an inherent challenge of being surrounded by people that only speak English and then having to like kind of keep your own language?
Yeah, I think there's just like some points of like language that just can't be translated. And you're like so trying to grasp like the English word, but there's just nothing in English for it. And so you just end up describing like everything around it, but not the word, which gets so annoying. But yes, but like even if you talk to other Asian friends, you can usually figure out what the common word is between the two languages, which I think is a lot better in some aspects,
and you can get like that little bit of comfort knowing that there's like a similar concept of it, even if it's not the exact word. There's like a similar vibe or a concept that exists in that culture, but then when you're trying to like explain it to someone just from New Zealand, you're like kind of like, but there's this like specific thing, and it's just and they're just
so
not
getting it. It's not part of either part of the culture or it's not part of the language.
Exactly, and it's just so hard to articulate, and then you get frustrated, and then the person
and
then
I'm just like, oh, never mind.
It's okay.
I'll just use a different word.
So since you're able to speak your own language, do you think that helps you connect with your family better?
Absolutely, because apart from like me and my immediate family, so like my mom and my brothers who all speak English, the rest of my family's back in China, so they don't know a word of English. And even now, like over here, lots of like the older Chinese like adults and stuff will say my Mandarin's really good. When I go back, they're like, your Mandarin is terrible. Even your like 7-year-old nephew speak better than you. And I'm like, guys, chill. But even then, like, I think it's something good because I can like still communicate with them. They can still like, even though they think my Mandarin's terrible, they can still communicate with me. They don't need to like piece together English. But yeah, I think it's something definitely that's helped me stay connected with them.
And especially because like you go back home quite a like.
I go back to China maybe like, well, since COVID it's been a bit here and there, but the last time I went back was 2023.
Okay.
So kind of
Yeah.
recently.
Yeah.
And then I go back to like my big brother's family where we also have a big Chinese community like every year.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Oh, so is your older brother also from here?
My older brother was born in China.
Oh, okay.
So I think he's kind of in the same situation where you were, where he was in China up until 12.
Yeah.
And then moved out.
Yeah.
But his is kind of flipped that now that he's been out of China for so long, like in high school and uni and now working, that his Mandarin has like gone back quite a lot, whereas his English has improved so much.
Yeah.
But yeah.
What's it like having a sibling or having a family member and being bilingual?
With my because I have two older brothers. With my second older brother, the age gap is a lot closer.
Yeah.
And I think the one complaint my parents always had growing up was that we would always speak English
to each other. Oh.
Because I don't know how, but it's the same with my nephews. Like, they'll speak English to each other. They won't speak Mandarin.
Yeah.
And so the common, like, household rule is if you're at home, it's Mandarin.
Right.
You can speak English when you go out.
Yeah.
So even now with my second brother, we do tend to converse in English, but neither make, like, the conscious effort because he's even less exposed to Mandarin than I am. So I have to make even more of a conscious effort to have talks with him in Mandarin so that his doesn't get worse.
Yeah.
But with my older brother being at home with like them and their family, it's the same rule. At home, it's Mandarin. So I'm like, Mandarin mode is on.
Yeah.
Kind of vibe.
So your nephews speak English?
They speak English and Mandarin as well. But I think because there would be like third generation immigrants at that point. And so I think in that aspect it's kind of even more hard for them. So my sister-in-law is also Chinese, which is quite helpful. But they also they go into an English school where there are a lot of other like Pakeha kids. There are also other Asian kids there, but it's like they're in the same boat as them, whereas like if they're around other kids, they want to speak English. They don't want to speak Mandarin. Yeah. Especially at school. Yeah. So at school it's like only English, even with the Chinese friends, and they won't speak Mandarin with the Chinese friends unless they're outside of school. Right. Which I think is like quite an interesting dynamic that they don't want to speak Mandarin at school with their friends.
But also I kind of do understand in terms of you don't want, especially like when you're younger, and you don't want to be different from everyone else.
No, that's so fair.
And like kids are really sensitive at that age, so and they very easily get bullied, I feel. So with any hint of like, oh, you're different, they'll kind of just like come at you, which is a sad reality, but also it is the reality of what it is. So I do understand where they're coming from when you do that. Absolutely. Speaking of that, do you think if you had kids, you would like teach them your mother tongue?
Oh yeah, it's like I'm sure you're like Chinese school, Korean school, probably like English school. Yeah. I think if you ask any like Asian kid grown up outside their like mother country, they've gone to language school at some point. So I went to Chinese school for like year 1, 2, 3, stopped because mum was like, you're not learning anything. Yeah. And then went back in intermediate and she was like, you're again too old to like pick anything up at this point. Yeah. So I did go to like Mandarin school, which is fine. But Mandarin is very hard to learn to read and write. Like, if you're not born up with it, because it's like every character has its own character. There's no like alphabet or system to writing it. It's just you have to know it. And that's just something I think it's so hard to pick up if you don't like practice every day from like a young age and are exposed to it. So when it comes to my kids, I probably would be quite pushy with that because I'm like, my mum can understand English, but I think I'd get so sad if my kids can't communicate with my mum in Mandarin. And they have to end up using English to her. And she's going to be like, Helen, what's happening?
That was a really big thing for me as well. Like, the big reason that I went back to Korea when I was in year 3 was because, again, I was losing my Korean and my mum was like, well, you were born in Korea, you look like a Korean, you are Korean. You should speak Korean. So what's the point of having all those aspects but not being able to speak your own language? Yeah. And so that's why we went back to Korea, and then I was there for another, I think, 3 years. But by the time I was like 11, that's when you like fully know your language.
Yeah.
So I wasn't gonna like lose it any more than like an average person would.
Yeah,
that's
I think for parents, it's kind of sad, but I think for them, it's nearly like embarrassing if you're like full Chinese, full Korean kid can't speak the language. It's like you've got all the resources there. You've got 2 parents that speak it.
Yeah.
Like nowadays, you've got the internet. You've got classes.
You've got Duolingo.
You've got... Guys, my Duolingo streak is 838 at the moment.
Of what language?
Chinese. But I don't really learn from Duolingo because, like, a lot of it's listening.
Yeah.
It's like, obviously, I can speak fluently. I can read and write.
Yeah.
But that's a different thing. But I think, for parents, it's more so like a pride issue. Like, you don't want your kid to not be able to speak it. But then, like... I think the issue my parents ran into was that because they were both working at the time, they couldn't invest their own time into encouraging it at home, so which is why I had to go to Chinese school.
Yeah.
But then it's like, I go to Chinese school, I do that 2 hours a week. I come home, it's not reinforced. Like, they don't have to reinforce it, which is like a sad reality for most people. Yeah. But I think at the end of the day, for parents, they do just want their kids to be able to speak the language. And like, I think being bilingual, so helpful in like the long run and like for your career and stuff like that. So.
And I think like communication in all aspects is really important, but like communication with your parents. My mum speaks English, but it's not like fluent English, so I'm obviously speaking in Korean to my mum, and like that's what she's comfortable with. Like if I didn't know how to speak Korean, I feel like there would be, again, that little bit of disconnect, because if I only spoke English, then I wouldn't get the concepts that are very niche to Asian cultures and to your language. So again, I think if I only spoke English, I wouldn't be as connected to my culture, but also my parents and my family in terms of how connected I am now.
Do you think with like Korean, because in Korean there's like formal language, informal language, do you think if you like only spoke English, that like culture of like respect would also be kind of like
I would
different?
Yeah, because I grew up really strict. Like in Korea, when I was living with my grandparents, my granddad's really strict.
Yeah.
And everyone lives in apartments in Korea, but in those apartments there's like a security man, just because it's a large, and then there's like securities for like parking lots and stuff, and every time we're like going in and out, would like greet them, say hi, bow to them. But that was like enforced, like drilled into my head by my granddad. I would literally get yelled at in front of him if I didn't bow, and I would be in tears.
Was it 90 degrees?
Yeah. No, it's like I think 90 degrees is like too much. I think it's like but like
45.
Still hand on your like belly when you're like little, and then like greeting them and saying hello.
Yeah.
And so that kind of like those manners were like really engraved in me, and I think if I didn't grow up with that, I wouldn't do that as much, and I would just like say hello, but I would actually do the actions. And it's because there's the formal way and then the informal way. It's not just, most times it's just adding like the your or like something at the end, but also when you're getting like way more formal, there's like different ways of saying things, and I think again, if I didn't grow up with it, I would have no idea, and I would just come off really rude speaking to all these people, like even as like a customer.
Or even like with tone, probably. Right? Because I'm like, English tone, it's like quite expressive, but I feel like with maybe Korean, it's a lot more like
kind of
like more like mellow, maybe kind of, and like especially if you're doing like formal talk, it's probably quite like chill, very like polite kind of way. It's like the same in Mandarin. Like if you're talking to like an older person, Mandarin doesn't have like formal and informal, but it's very much so about like the tone and how you speak with it. But so I think language definitely adds a lot more than just talking. It's also like
Yeah.
the mannerisms
Yeah.
that come with how you speak as well. I think make a big impact
And
as
the
well.
depth of understanding that you can get for a culture, I think,
Yeah,
deepens when you do speak their language.
absolutely.
Do you ever code switch?
Codes.
So it's like when
little
you,
bit.
yeah,
A little
speak,
bit.
yeah.
I don't think I do it too much. But do you want to define code switch for?
So it's pretty much when you're speaking one language, but then you mix the words of a different language. So if I go,
So like Chinglish.
yeah, or like Konglish,
Yeah.
but then Konglish in itself is kind of like a different way of like speaking. It's like they get the English word and adapt it in some way else. But if I find myself code switching a lot when I'm speaking Korean. So I would speak Korean, but I would very rarely finish the sentence fully Korean. It would always involve like an English word. So that's what code switching is.
I think I code switch a little bit with my mum because I think there are just like parts in my vocab which I just don't have at all. Like one of the big areas where I lack in vocab is like academics.
Exactly.
I don't know how to explain what I'm doing at university in Mandarin because I'm like, no one taught me that growing up in primary school. So I think when it comes to like explaining things like thesis or like research essay, I don't know what that is in Mandarin.
Yeah.
So I just end up being like, oh, 我要完成一个 research essay. And she's like, oh, what's a research essay? And I'm like, oh, it's a blah, 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 blah. But I think like that's a part where my vocab's like really missing. And I feel like for a lot of people, it's maybe like not knowing how to say things, but you just don't have the vocab because you're not exposed to it on every day.
And I find it on technical terms as well.
Yeah.
I don't even know what the word for algebra is in Korean. I've tried so hard to find it, but they just don't have the concept of algebra either. It's like a different kind of math. It's they do it in like a different way that it's not just algebra and calculus. So when I'm like explaining things to my granddad, I just go algebra, and then he's like, "What's algebra?" Yeah, 그게 뭐야? And then I'm like, algebra, like complex equations and simultaneous equations. And it's just really hard to describe to them. And if I'm like, oh, mooting, we did mooting today.
Like what mooting?
Yeah, what's mooting? You know, so I think that's really difficult, and I find myself code switching a lot when I do that. The one thing that I do the most is saying but. Because but in Korean is hajiman, right?
Yeah.
But so in English, you can start a sentence with but when you're verbally speaking. Like technically in English, you shouldn't. Yeah. But when you're verbally speaking, it's fine. So if I go, oh, today, like I was supposed to record this podcast, but like something else happened, like the laminator took so long. I would say that sentence structure exactly in Korean, and I'll go hajiman. Yeah. And then mum's like, people in Korea don't use hajiman like that. They don't ever like. So everyone who listens to me that's Korean kind of just like, I understand what you're saying, but something about it sounds off, but I can't identify what exactly sounds off because so every single word translates to exactly how I can understand it. So like people that listen to it are like, yeah, I get what you mean, but why does it sound slightly off? So would you just not
say hajiman at all?
You wouldn't say hajiman. It would just like at the end of a word, it would go 그렇지만, or like it would be integrated better. Yeah. Like I just use the term exactly as how English would translate it to Korean, but I just don't hear enough Korean dialect in my day-to-day language that I just think it's fine, and everyone else can understand it, and they're like, oh. No, I do know what you mean.
Something's off, but like I don't know what
exactly.
That's so interesting.
So and then the more time that my mum spends with me, she's like, I'm like learning your way of speaking Korean, and she's getting confused as well. And I'm like, it's okay.
Yeah, it's just your little way of speaking.
Yeah, as long as you understand.
Yeah, no, that's so fair. That's so interesting.
Yeah. We've only talked about like the benefits so far. Do you think there are any challenges or moments where you felt, I guess, like a little ashamed or people have shamed you for speaking another
I
language?
don't think so. I mean, I feel like I've been quite fortunate growing up in Dunedin. We had quite a close-knit Chinese community, like where I grew up from like 1 to 5. It was like a little unit block, and it was really like us, Chinese family here, Chinese grandmas. Up here, Chinese family with 2 kids. Here, another Chinese family with kids. So it was like all quite tight-knit, and then we went to Chinese church as well. So it was quite close. And so I was able to speak a lot of Mandarin. But I don't think there was really like any point where I felt like ashamed of my like everyone's gonna come at that moment when you're in primary school and people find out you can speak another language and like, oh, say this,
something,
and I'm like, I don't want to. But you do it anyway, and they're like, oh, that's so cool. And then I think growing up, there are just like those moments when like Pakeha people will be like, oh, shit, and I'm like, huh? Like they're saying thank you, but I'm just like so out of it that I'm like not expecting it. And they say it, and I'm like, oh, you're welcome. I'm like, I don't want to respond to you in my mother tongue. But like, I think it's something I have always had quite a positive outlook on. I haven't really found any negative experiences with it. Do you have any?
I found myself having to feel like I needed to assimilate a lot when I was in high school. And because also I wasn't in the position where I spoke fluent English, I spent most of my time speaking English, and I wanted to get better at English as fast as I could. So I spent a lot of my time, especially until year 10, trying not to speak any Korean with anyone except my parents. I wouldn't hang out with any like Korean people unless it was at church. If people asked me what my because Bowman is my legal name, so when I'm like enrolled in anything, it's Bowman, and I like deliberate because people were struggling to like say it, and I didn't like how people said Bowman, and it was just like a big insecurity that I had, that I went to the office and I was like, actually, can you change my name to Sarah? And so you can see from my student IDs and photos, it was like Bowman for quite a while, and then it stopped being Bowman, and then it was Sarah. And so it's just little things like that I was like, oh, I just don't want to be associated with being Korean or like Korean people. I want people to just see me as like just me, not someone that's Korean. But I think now I'm less like that, and I am grateful that I'm bilingual. I think I was quite fortunate. I think for a lot of kids born out of like Asian, you'll get like an English first name, and then like your middle name will be your Asian first name, and then your last name. So I was quite fortunate that like on everything it'd be Helen. But then it's like last name pronunciation, because my last name was Ruan, which a lot of people would just be like, oh, Run, or like Ruan. I'm like, it's not actually that. And so prize giving is always like, how are they going to pronounce it this time? Exactly.
So I guess I get yours on a little scale, but obviously I don't, I can't understand it to the full extent. But
I think it's just being able to get comfortable with it. Again, especially at a younger age, you're more sensitive to it.
I agree with what you said. Like, you just want to be the same as everyone else, and you want to make friends, and you don't want to be different or seen as different from other people.
You said before, like, a really good thing about being bilingual is that it helps you with education and career. Do you want to expand more on that?
I think, like, when you come to, like, jobs and on your CV, I always put down that I'm bilingual. I'm, like, currently I'm working in a technically customer service job. But I think being bilingual helps so much with that, because they can see you're able to communicate with not just one group, but 2 groups of people. And, like, it comes back to, like, having the mannerisms. They probably understand there are, like, different ways you communicate, and so having that really helps with it. And it also shows that you're able to like balance a wider perspective of things as well, because like they see, oh, they're Chinese, they can speak Mandarin, they probably have a different perspective on things than if we like hired just a normal Pakeha person. So I always put down that I'm bilingual on a CV, because I think one, it's something to be proud of.
Yeah.
Two, you never know if it's actually going to benefit you or not. And if it does, well, that's fantastic.
Exactly.
But yeah,
I think the social justice move that we had last year really got me thinking about that perspective of like, it is so valuable to be able to have that different lens and perspective to view things.
Yeah, I think with that, because the main case of that is the Ding case, where literally in the New Zealand court they're talking about the Chinese concept of guangxi.
Yeah.
And like guangxi isn't really, that's like one of the words that can't really be translated into English, but it's something like if you're Asian you can understand the concept of.
Yeah.
And so when we did that move, I was kind of nervous as to how people would interpret it.
Yeah.
But I'm like, from seeing everybody's move, like everyone had a good grasp.
Yeah.
I know, which I guess shows like how one Chinese concept is like quite universal and it can be translated into other Asian cultures.
Yeah.
But if we took that concept and put it in a normal mood, they'd be like, oh, what does this mean? What does this case actually mean? Like, to them, they're like, oh, it's just a relationship. I'm like, it's not quite a relationship though. It's a little bit more than that.
There's so much more depth and complication, like complexities to it. That, I think it is definitely super valuable to be able to see that, because no one country has just one population. There's always a mixed race of people, and like there's just gonna be more people in different countries as like the years progress. It's never just gonna like everyone revert back to their own countries. So I think like more and more that's becoming a lot more valuable of a lens and perspective to have.
Did you find it quite, because you participated in the move, did you find it quite easy to grasp like the cases and the concepts?
I think because when I read it I was like, oh, I know where this is getting at, but I also understand how it's going to be so difficult to like defend in a Western legal system, because no law like actually, there's like no specific law that can cover that area.
And it's not like something you can define in English.
And there were very little cases available to set as precedent. And I remember when we were doing it, we were like we get the concept and we know how to defend this person, but to articulate it and to make it make sense in a legal setting was really difficult.
I guess that's when you would like start drawing on like personal experiences, I guess, but then even with that comes with like a little bit of a vulnerability.
Exactly.
What if the judge is like, that's not relevant? Because they just don't understand how your personal experience is connecting to that concept.
And they can view it very subjective, and then if it's the judge that you want to be wanting to please it.
That's so true.
Do you think that being bilingual helps in like your law like studies right now?
No.
No,
like
probably not.
I mean, I think law school's gone, once you reach your electives, there's a lot more options when it comes to that. So last year I did comparative law with Roy Ping. And Roy Ping's comparative law is about the legal systems in, she did the comparisons between Hong Kong and China, which gold for me, because like I can understand that, but there are a lot of like, that's like one very niche example, and I know that's not going to happen in every single law paper, but like in that paper she was like using Chinese words to describe like like again concepts and stuff, and I'm like, me and Ryan would understand it because like we both speak it, we understand it. I'm like, oh, this word comes from this word, or it makes up this other word. Whereas like the other people in the class are like, what is she going on about? But like that's one very niche example where I'm like, Mandarin has helped me. But I'm like, even with like Tereo now being so incorporated into law school, it's like everyone's getting more exposed to that. Everyone is starting to pick up on it a lot more, and I think that's really good. And I'm like, in New Zealand, the official languages are sign language and Te Reo. English isn't even actually an official language. So I'm like, I think in New Zealand, I'm like, if it's an official language, you should be learning it a lot more. than other languages per se.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I think it's good that they are incorporating tikanga mandatory from first year. And I think, I don't know if it's mandatory to take the te reo course or if it's like very recommended, but I saw a lot of first years put their hand up when Mamori was like, oh, so who was taking that te reo course? And like majority were.
That's good.
So
I think it's like for those who like aren't Asian, they're and like are quite predominantly Pākehā and they come to law school, they're probably first exposure to concepts that aren't English is probably like te reo concepts of like utu and manaakitanga and whanaungatanga and all that stuff, and like those can also be understood in our Asian culture. But for Pākehā, they're just like, what is this? Like they just don't understand. And I guess even in that regards, being bilingual, being Asian, it puts us like a little bit more forward in that understanding, because it's like, oh, we have this in our culture as well. It's very similar. And it's something that like we incorporate as well. And I also think it's because we're predominantly influenced by American culture as well, especially with like legal dramas or legal documentaries and stuff like that. So when you grow up watching that kind of stuff, you're never exposed to tikanga. You're never really exposed to those concepts that are tikanga concepts. So I think when you actually come into law school in New Zealand, it's like a big reality of, oh, I'm not actually in the States. I'm not actually on Suits Guy. I'm not Harvey Spencer or
this
whatever.
isn't Legally Blonde.
Like, and I think that is starting to also be reflected in our courts as well, with more integration of like te reo, especially over the last few years. It's reflecting the New Zealand like population. It's like New Zealand's been classified as like bicultural and like having multiple cultures for like many years, but that hasn't been reflected in the court system. Obviously not everyone who goes through court is a white person, so I think it's really good that it's also been reflected in that aspect as well.
Do you think that the loss of your mother tongue is kind of inevitable as people more or less immigrate and there's second generation and third generation?
I don't think so. I think if you want to keep it, you do have to put the effort into like seeking those opportunities, seeking like the resources and like going and practicing it. I'm like, honestly, I kind of hope that my kids' Mandarin is better than mine at the end of the day, because I feel like you mentioned like you were raised by your grandparents, and I'm like, that's very common across most Asian cultures. I'm like, okay, surely if my mom raises my kids, then like their Mandarin will be better than mine, because I'm like, my mom, she's grandma mode. She doesn't have to worry about anything else except teach my kids Mandarin. I don't think it's inevitable. I think it's something you very much have to put the effort into. And I think it's something I really cherish. But what are your thoughts on it?
I think it's really important to keep language. I think it would be really sad that if everyone that immigrated would lose their language, because the English-speaking population is already such a large population. Korean specifically, they like, I get like languages like Spanish or like European languages are kind of similar to each other, so you can pick it up pretty easily, and they're pretty adaptable. But Korean is, only Korean people can speak it, you know, and it's a very just like one country thing. So I feel like if Koreans started immigrating more, which they're already doing, and then went overseas, and there's more like future generations that are just losing their language, I think eventually, I don't know, like 1,000 years, potentially it could die out, and I think that's a sad reality to think about.
I think like, I don't know, there are these TikTokers, but it's like that guy who can like speak like the polyglot guy from like Oxford who can speak like 10 or something languages, and he's always talking about like, probably eventually everyone's going to end up speaking the same language again. And then it's just going to go in the cycle of like all the languages start combining, we all speak one language, and then it just separates all over again because everyone starts speaking like different ways, different accents, and then it's like kind of just like a continuous cycle, which kind of happens. But I don't think it's inevitable. I think you just gotta try.
I think overall, again, like the whole concept of what we talked about in this podcast is not only is it just a language, but keeping that also gets you way more connected to your culture, gives you different perspectives, and overall I think is just who, like, it is your identity at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think if I didn't speak Mandarin, I think I'd definitely be a lot disconnected from my family and from my culture. And like, I really like Chinese culture. It's very fun. Sometimes I can't keep up with all the new slang.
Definitely not.
I just can't keep up with slang, and my aunties will be telling me this. I'm like, I don't know what you're saying because I don't know what slang that is. But yeah, it's definitely something I very much so cherish, and I know I'm very lucky to be able to speak it because I know so many like NZBCs who just don't know how to say anything. But
just like a last question to wrap up, what do you think of Asian languages when it comes to expressing like love or, you know, loss or
I think it's so
grief?
Like, it's kind of awkward. Like saying like I love you in Mandarin is what I need, and I've just like never said that to my mom. Like I think with Asian cultures, it's very much like actions speak a lot louder than words. So like, while I've never said I love you to my mum, I do the things like I'll help her clean. I'll like do the dishes without her asking. I'll help her carry the grocery bags, and it's like the small acts that she knows. I'll call my mum every Sunday. Like she knows that I'm there at the end of the day, and I think that probably translates a lot to like Korean culture, because I'm like, when's the last time you said 사랑해 to your mom?
Honestly, this is really bad, but I don't remember. I think she just goes like, love you, and then I go, me too. Or like something like that, but I don't, the word 사랑해 is so foreign to me.
Right.
I don't think I've ever said it out loud to anyone. I've typed it before to my grandparents, and I say like,
you don't say 사랑해 to your grandparents?
No, this is really bad. Like,
I feel like it's just like very awkward.
I shouldn't be like embarrassed or awkward to say it, but I just like can't get it out of my mouth. Like, I think I said the word like I miss you a lot, but I think that's like me missing someone is me telling that I love them, but I would never verbally say 사랑해 to them. I would just like internally cringe if I like say that. I feel like I'm gonna combust when I say that.
No, that's so fair. I feel like surprisingly, my second brother says I love you to my mum a lot more than I do.
Oh yeah.
Like when they're on the phone, I can always hear him saying, "Ma, 我爱你," and I'm like, but I'm like, I just know that I show it in a different way than like verbally saying it. Whereas like Henry doesn't like visit my mother as often, so like he has to like verbally say it instead of like doing it through actions and stuff like that.
Does your mum say it too?
No. But like that's just Asian parents. Like again, it's actions speak louder than words. Her way of showing love is like, when I go over, she'll cook me all my favorite food. She'll like buy me the like special treats that we can't get here. Or she'll like buy all the snacks for me to bring back and stuff like that. Like it's just a different way of showing it, I think, for her as well. Like even with my nephews, I think it's more so like my sister-in-law, their mum, who like instigates the I love you too. And like I can just hear my nephews go, me too. And I'm like, guys, come on, like give her something back.
But I don't know, if someone says I love you, then I never go like I love you, but I just go me too. That's so cute though. Anyways, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Hope you had a great time.
I did.
Is there anything else that you want to add?
Not really. Thank you for having me. I'm really looking forward to what you have in store this year.
Yeah. Do you have any plugs?
When will this come out?
Week 2, week 3?
Week 2, week 3. I don't really have many plugs. Sign up for ALSA if you haven't already. I'm sure the link will be in the description to sign up to be a member. Lots of benefits. Take it from a 5th year.
Yeah.
It's a good way to indulge in your Asian culture, and you will find Asian friends like me who can also speak Mandarin, and then they can help you practice your language.
Yeah.
So it's basically Duolingo in person.
Literally, we are the owl.
We are.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Bye.